Before Caryn, there was Svetlana. It is the secret chapter of Matt Roloff's love life that was scrubbed from history, a chapter that changes everything we thought we knew about the transition from Amy to the new era of Roloff Farms. We have always been told a very specific story about how the divorce went down. We were told that Matt leaned on Caryn Chandler, his loyal farm manager, for support during those dark days, and that a friendship naturally blossomed into romance. But leaked emails and insider reports from 2016 are now painting a drastically different and much darker picture. These documents suggest that Matt Roloff was seconds away from marrying a woman he met on a high-end mail-order bride website. He paid the fees, he bought the ring, and he filed the paperwork, but she never arrived. Why? Because Caryn Chandler allegedly intercepted the application. This is the story of the fiancée Matt tried to buy, the 22-year-old woman from Eastern Europe who was promised the big house, and the girlfriend who made sure she never stepped foot in Oregon. If you want to stay ahead of the curve and get the updates that the network tries to bury, you need to hit that like button right now and subscribe to LPBW Update. We are digging deeper than anyone else into the secrets of Roloff Farms, and you do not want to miss our upcoming deep dive into the toxic mold scandal that is threatening the family's health. So please subscribe now and join the conversation. To understand how this scandal was even possible, we have to go back to the darkest days of the divorce in 2016. The atmosphere at Roloff Farms was toxic. The marriage between Matt and Amy had disintegrated into a daily battle for control, territory, and dignity. Matt Roloff was a man who felt isolated in his own kingdom. While the camera showed us a man who was frustrated with farm logistics and negotiating property lines, the reality behind the scenes was a man who was deeply lonely and profoundly insecure. He was facing the prospect of living alone in the big house, a massive property designed for a family, while his soon-to-be ex-wife lived just hundreds of feet away in the farmhouse. Matt has always been a man who needs a plan, a man who needs a project, and most importantly, a man who needs admiration. He was used to being the visionary, the leader, the man in charge. But with Amy, he was constantly challenged. Amy had found her voice. She was pushing back. She was no longer the compliant wife he could mold to his will. Matt didn't just want a new partner. He wanted the opposite of Amy. He wanted someone who would look at him with unconditional adoration, someone who had no history with the farm, no baggage with the kids, and no interest in challenging his authority. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a clean slate. And this is where the narrative takes a sharp turn away from Caryn Chandler. While Caryn was certainly present on the farm, managing the pumpkin season and organizing the logistics, sources suggest that Matt did not initially view her as the replacement wife. She was too involved. She knew too much. She was a contemporary, a woman with her own opinions and her own history on the farm. Matt was looking for an escape, not a continuation of his current reality. According to recovered digital footprints and financial records that have surfaced, Matt turned his attention outward, far outward. He didn't look for love in Hillsborough. He didn't look in Portland. He looked overseas. In early 2016, Matt reportedly signed a contract with an exclusive high-end agency we will call Euro Brides International. This wasn't a standard dating site. This was a matchmaking service for wealthy American men seeking partners from Eastern Europe. The service promises traditional values, loyalty, and women who are looking for a stable life in the United States. It is a transactional arrangement, plain and simple. You pay for access, you pay for translation, and eventually you pay for the visa. For a man like Matt, who felt beaten down by the constant arguments with Amy, the sales pitch was intoxicating. The agency sold him a fantasy of a life where he was the benevolent provider, the king of the castle, respected and adored without question. He wasn't looking for an equal. He was looking for a fresh start with someone who would owe everything to him. The records indicate that Matt spent weeks browsing the catalogs. He was shopping. It is a crude way to put it, but that is the reality of the industry. He was looking at profiles, photos, and bios, filtering them by age, interests, and English proficiency. And that is when he found her. In the leaked documents, she is referred to as Svetlana. She was 22 years old, blonde, and strikingly beautiful. Her profile described her as a simple girl who loved nature, wanted a quiet life, and dreamed of taking care of a husband and a home. To Matt, she was the perfect antidote to the chaos of his divorce. She was young, which fed his ego. She was from a different world, which meant she had no preconceived notions about his dwarfism or his reality TV fame. She just saw a successful American businessman who could change her life. This was not a casual flirtation. This was a business transaction disguised as romance. The financial records associated with this period are staggering. We are talking about receipts that show Matt was fully committed to importing this new life. Before they even met in person, the money started flowing. Western Union receipts linked to Matt's personal accounts show transfers of $5,000 a month sent to an account in Svetlana's home city. The memos on these transfers are telling. They are labeled English lessons, travel preparation, and wardrobe updates. Matt was investing in her. He was molding her before she even arrived. He was paying for her to learn English so she could communicate with him, but more importantly, so she could fit into the world he was building. He was essentially funding a makeover from across the ocean, ensuring that when she arrived at Roloff Farms, she would look the part of the new lady of the manor. Imagine the psychology at play here. Matt is sitting in his office, arguably one of the most stressful places on the farm, surrounded by divorce lawyers' paperwork and production schedules. He feels misunderstood by his family and attacked by his wife. But then he opens his laptop and there is Svetlana. She is emailing him updates about her English classes. She is sending him videos thanking him for his generosity. She is telling him that he is her hero. It is a dopamine hit that he wasn't getting anywhere else. It allowed him to dissociate from the reality of the crumbling marriage and live in a fantasy where he was the savior. He wasn't the bad guy who was divorcing Amy. He was the knight in shining armor rescuing a beautiful young woman from a difficult life in Eastern Europe. It fed his savior complex perfectly. But it wasn't just about the emotions, it was about the logistics. Matt is a man of logistics. He treats relationships like construction projects. You need a permit, you need a blueprint, and you need a timeline. The K-1 Fiancée visa is the ultimate construction permit for a relationship. It is a legal designation that allows a foreign national to enter the United States for the specific purpose of marrying a citizen within 90 days. It is a high-stakes process. It requires background checks, financial disclosures, and proof of a legitimate relationship. It is not something you do on a whim. It requires a lawyer. And that is exactly what Matt did. He hired a specialized immigration attorney separate from the lawyers handling his divorce. This was a compartmentalized operation. He didn't want Amy to know, obviously, but he also didn't want the kids to know. He was building a secret escape hatch. The emails between Matt and the immigration attorney are clinical and focused. They discuss the income requirements, which Matt easily met. They discuss the proof of relationship, which involves printing out hundreds of pages of chat logs and emails between him and Svetlana. Matt was curating a portfolio of their love story to present to the U.S. government. He was selecting the photos where they looked the happiest, the emails where she sounded the most devoted. He was crafting a narrative for the embassy officials, just like he crafts narratives for the TV show. He was convinced that he could produce his way through the immigration system. This went on for months. While the cameras were rolling for Little People, Big World, Capturing the tension of the divorce, this shadow plot was unfolding in the background. Every time Matt was seen on his phone, looking distracted or smiling at a text message, the audience assumed he was texting Caryn. We all assumed Caryn was the source of that secret smile. But these new reports suggest that Caryn was actually the furthest thing from his mind in those specific moments. He was texting Svetlana. He was checking the status of the visa application. He was looking at photos of wedding dresses she had sent him. He was planning a future that did not include Caryn Chandler as his wife. At this point in the timeline, Caryn was still the farm manager. She was his confidant, yes. She was his right hand, yes. But she was also an employee. She was on the payroll. Matt relied on her to run the business, and he relied on her for emotional venting about Amy, but he had not elevated her to the position of wife in his long-term plan. In his mind, Caryn was part of the old life. She was part of the farm machinery. Svetlana was the new life. Svetlana was the retirement plan. Svetlana won the trophy. The amount of money Matt was hemorrhaging into this project is eye-watering. Beyond the monthly allowance, there were fees for the agency, fees for the background checks, and fees for the expedited legal services. The total estimated cost of this endeavor, before Svetlana even booked a flight, was upwards of $50,000. That is $50,000 spent on a woman he has spent very little physical time with. It speaks to the level of desperation Matt felt. He was trying to buy certainty. He wanted to guarantee that when the divorce was final, he wouldn't be alone. He wanted to seamlessly transition from Amy to Svetlana without a single day of solitude. It brings up a fascinating question about Matt's view of women and relationships. Did he ever truly love Svetlana? Or was she just a listing in a catalog that met his specifications? The email suggests the latter. He rarely asked about her interests or her family in a way that showed genuine curiosity. The conversations were dominated by his plans, his farm, his show, and how she would fit into it. He was hiring a wife, he was casting a role, and Svetlana, for her part, was playing the role perfectly. She knew what to say, she knew to stroke his ego, she knew to agree with his complaints about how unfairly he was being treated by his family. She was the perfect echo chamber for his grievances. As 2016 progressed, the paperwork was finalized. The petition for the K-1 visa was ready to be filed. The package was thick, a heavy envelope filled with tax returns, affidavits of support, and the carefully curated evidence of their romance. It was sitting on Matt's desk in the farm office, ready to be mailed to the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. That envelope represented the point of no return. Once that was filed, it was in the system. It was official. Matt was ready to pull the trigger. He was ready to import his new bride and shock the world. He probably imagined the season finale of the show, the arrival of the beautiful, young, blonde fiancée who would sweep into the big house and start a new dynasty. But Matt made one critical error. He underestimated the person who was managing his life. He underestimated Caryn Chandler. He forgot that Caryn wasn't just managing the pumpkin patch. She was managing him. She handled his schedule. She handled his travel. And most importantly, she often handled his mail. The farm office was Caryn's domain just as much as it was Matt's. She knew where everything was. She knew the filing system. She knew the passwords. And Matt, in his arrogance, left the most dangerous document of his life sitting out in the open. He thought he was the smartest person in the room. He thought he could keep a secret of this magnitude from the woman whose job it was to know everything. This brings us to the moment where the story shifts from a romance scam to a thriller. The stage was set. The money had been spent. The girl was waiting in Eastern Europe with her bags packed, waiting for the embassy interview. Matt was confident. He was arrogant. He thought he had secured his future, but he was about to collide with a force he hadn't calculated for. A woman who had spent years positioning herself as the next Mrs. Roloff. A woman who had put in the time, dealt with the drama, and wasn't about to let a 22-year-old catalog bride take her spot. The discovery of that visa packet wasn't just an awkward moment. It was a declaration of war. And what happened next would not only destroy Matt's plans for Svetlana, but would fundamentally change the power dynamic between Matt and Caryn forever. The farm office at night is a quiet place, but in the spring of 2016, it was the war room where the future of the Roloff legacy was being secretly rewritten. Matt had left for the evening, perhaps heading back to the big house to video chat with his distant fiancée, leaving the physical reality of his business behind. Caryn Chandler remained. As the farm manager, her duties were all-encompassing. She sorted invoices, she managed schedules, and she filtered the mail. That night, sitting atop a stack of vendor contracts, she found the packet. It wasn't a standard white envelope. It was a thick, heavy courier parcel addressed to the United States Department of Homeland Security, Citizenship, and Immigration Services. The return address was Matt Roloff's private legal counsel, not the family lawyer, but the specialist. According to insiders who were present during this tumultuous era, Caryn likely assumed it was related to the divorce. Perhaps Matt was hiding assets or expediting the property split. Curiosity, or perhaps a protective instinct over the empire she helped run, drove her to open it. What she slid out of that envelope was not a property deed. It was a K-1 Fiancée visa petition. And attached to the front page, clipped with a cold, metallic paperclip, was a passport-sized photo of Svetlana. We have to pause and really visualize the visceral shock of that moment. Caryn had spent years in the trenches of Roloff Farms. She had navigated the volatile moods of both Matt and Amy. She had been the shoulder to cry on, the strategic advisor, and the constant presence. She had arguably put in more work to maintain Matt's lifestyle than anyone else. And here, in her hands, was the proof that she was being passed over. She wasn't the destination, she was the bridge. Matt was using her support to survive the divorce so he could hand the keys to the kingdom to a 22-year-old stranger who had never planted a pumpkin seed in her life. The betrayal wasn't just romantic, it was professional. It was personal. It was a slap in the face that cost $50,000. The contents of the file were a dossier of humiliation for Caryn. There were receipts for jewelry she had never seen. There were chat logs where Matt described the farm as a paradise waiting for its queen. He was promising Svetlana the life that Caryn was currently managing as an employee. The rage that must have consumed her in that empty office is unimaginable. But Caryn Chandler is not a woman who explodes. She is a woman who maneuvers. She knew that confronting Matt directly would be a mistake. If she screamed at him, he would retreat. He would see her as another Amy, screeching, demanding, and controlling. He would double down on his fantasy of the docile, grateful Eastern European bride. If Caryn wanted to win, she couldn't force Matt to choose her. She had to make the choice for him. She had to eliminate the option. This is where the story enters the realm of high-stakes sabotage. Based on the timeline of events and the eventual denial of the visa, a theory has emerged among private investigators and insiders that Caryn did not destroy the packet. She let it go. She resealed the envelope and sent it off, knowing that the bureaucratic wheels were turning. But she allegedly launched a counteroffensive that was silent, anonymous, and devastating. The U.S. State Department has a tip line. Embassies in Eastern Europe are on high alert for fraud. They are constantly looking for reasons to deny visas, especially when there is a significant age gap and a wealthy American sponsor. It is widely believed that shortly after the application was mailed, the U.S. Embassy in Svetlana's home country received an anonymous letter. This wasn't a handwritten scrawl. It was a dossier of its own. Sources suggest the letter was crafted with malicious precision. It allegedly flagged the application as a fraudulent marriage, claiming that the beneficiary, Svetlana, was being paid for her compliance, citing the Western Union transfers as proof of solicitation rather than genuine support. But the letter didn't stop there. It reportedly weaponized Matt's own public life against him. The informant allegedly included court filings from the Roloff divorce, highlighting accusations of controlling behavior and volatility. The narrative spun for the immigration officers was that Matt Roloff was not a lonely romantic, but a predatory figure seeking a vulnerable young woman to control. It painted a picture of a dangerous environment, using the drama of the TV show as evidence of an unstable household. Who had access to the financial records to prove the transfers? Who had access to the divorce filings? Who knew the exact timeline of the application? All signs point to the person managing the files. The brilliance of this move was that it took the decision out of Matt's hands. It wasn't Caryn telling him no. It was the United States government. Weeks passed. Matt was anxious. He was checking his email constantly, waiting for the notification that Svetlana had passed her interview. The process for a K-1 visa involves a face-to-face interview at the embassy. It is the final hurdle. Svetlana went to that interview. We can assume she was prepped, dressed in the wardrobe Matt paid for, ready to answer questions about her fiancé in Oregon. But when she arrived at the window, the tone was different. The consular officer didn't ask about their favorite songs or how they met. They asked about the money. They asked about the arrangement. They likely pulled out the file containing the anonymous allegations. The result was a hard denial, a refusal under Section 212A of the Immigration and Nationality Act. But it wasn't just a denial, it was a flagging. Her name was entered into the system as a potential fraud risk. She wasn't coming to Oregon. She wasn't coming to America at all. Back at the farm, the rejection letter arrived. And this is the important part of the alleged cover-up. Matt Roloff, a man who prides himself on his ability to negotiate and fix problems, would have fought this. He would have hired more lawyers. He would have appealed. He would have flown to Eastern Europe himself to sort it out. But he never did. Why? Because insiders claim he never saw the true reason for the rejection. Caryn, once again managing the flow of information, allegedly intercepted the official correspondence from the State Department. She couldn't hide the fact that the visa was denied. Svetlana would have emailed Matt about that immediately, likely in tears. But Caryn could control the narrative of the denial. When Matt received the news, it is believed he was led to believe it was a bureaucratic error, a temporary delay caused by the complex political climate or a clerical mistake. He was told to wait. And while Matt waited, Caryn made her move. She didn't have to compete with a beautiful 22-year-old anymore. She just had to compete with a ghost. With Svetlana stuck thousands of miles away, unable to visit and unable to secure a visa, the relationship shifted from a tangible reality to a frustrating digital burden. The dopamine hit wore off. The video calls became sad and repetitive. Matt was frustrated. He wanted a wife now. He was lonely now. Caryn stepped into that void with surgical precision. She became everything Svetlana promised to be, but she was right there in the room. She started spending more time at the big house, not just as a manager, but as a companion. She watched movies with him. She listened to him vent about the stupid government blocking his happiness. She played the role of the sympathetic friend, all while holding the smoking gun that had killed the relationship. She likely said things like, "Matt, maybe it's a sign. Maybe it's just too complicated. You need someone who understands your life here, someone who can help you with the grandkids, someone who knows the farm." She was reprogramming him. She was subtly highlighting the difficulties of bringing a foreigner into their chaotic life. Imagine the culture shock, Matt. The cameras, the drama with Amy. Would a girl like that really survive here? Or would she leave you in 6 months and take half the money? She planted the seeds of doubt that she had watered with the anonymous letter. She turned the mail order fantasy from a dream into a logistical nightmare in Matt's mind. Meanwhile, the money stopped flowing. Matt, frustrated by the lack of progress and perhaps influenced by Caryn's whispers about gold diggers, cut off the Western Union payments. The English lessons stopped. The wardrobe budget dried up. And as soon as the money stopped, Svetlana's affection reportedly cooled. This was the final nail in the coffin. It proved to Matt that the relationship was transactional, confirming Caryn's warnings. "See, Matt," she could say, "she only cared while the checks were clearing. I'm here every day, working for you, caring for you, and I haven't asked for a dime." It was a masterclass in manipulation. By the time 2017 rolled around, the Svetlana chapter was closed. Matt stopped talking about her, the photos were deleted, the emails were archived. He publicly debuted his relationship with Caryn, and the narrative became the one we all know. The loyal employee who fell in love with the boss. The audience bought it. Amy was the villain, Matt was the victim, and Caryn was the savior. But the secrets of the past have a way of resurfacing, especially when there is a scorned woman on the other side of the world who feels she was promised a kingdom and left with nothing. Svetlana didn't just disappear. She grew up. She realized she had been played, not just by Matt, but by the woman standing in his shadow. And in the digital age, nothing is ever truly deleted. Years later, the silence broke. It wasn't a headline on CNN, but a rumble in the dark corners of the internet. A data breach at the matchmaking agency, combined with a disgruntled former employee of the farm who had seen the paperwork, started to connect the dots. But the real explosion came when Svetlana herself, no longer a naive 22-year-old, but a woman looking for closure and perhaps a payout, decided to leverage the only thing she had left, the emails. These weren't just love letters, they were contracts of expectation. They laid out the floor plan of the big house. They detailed the appearance fees she would receive for appearing on Little People, Big World. They exposed the fact that Matt wasn't just looking for love, he was casting a character for his reality show. He was trying to import a plotline. The emergence of these emails changes everything we see on screen today. When you watch Caryn sitting on the porch of the new building, looking out over the farm, you aren't looking at a woman who stumbled into a relationship. You are looking at a woman who won a game of chess that Matt didn't even know he was playing. She sits on the throne that was bought and paid for by Svetlana. She lives in the house that was promised to another woman. And every time she rolls her eyes at Amy or pushes Matt to sell the farm, you have to wonder, is she protecting Matt or is she securing the asset she worked so hard to steal? The confrontation that followed the leak of these rumors was private, but we can piece it together. Imagine the moment Matt realized that Caryn knew. Imagine the moment he realized that the visa bureaucratic error was actually a strategic strike by the woman sleeping next to him. You would think he would be furious. You would think he would leave her. But he didn't. And this is the darkest twist of all. Why did Matt stay with Caryn even after whispers of the sabotage reached him? Because by then, he was trapped. Caryn knew where the bodies were buried, metaphorically and perhaps financially. She knew about the offshore payments to the agency. She knew about the frantic attempts to buy a wife. If she walked, she wouldn't just leave, she would take his reputation with her. She could go to the tabloids and confirm the predatory narrative. She held the power. The dynamic had shifted completely. Matt was no longer the boss. He was the hostage. And what about Svetlana? Her side of the story is a tragedy of modern romance scams. But with a twist, she was the one scammed out of a future. She was promised the American dream and got ghosted. But her recent activity on social media suggests she isn't done. She has been liking comments that criticize Caryn. She has been posting cryptic messages about karma and stolen lives. She is the loose thread that could unravel the entire Roloff tapestry. As we move into the final act of this exposure, we have to look at the fallout. How did the kids react? Does Zach know that his father tried to replace his mother with a girl younger than him? Does Jeremy know that the farm inheritance was almost diverted to a stranger from Eastern Europe? The tension we see on the show today, the distance between the kids and Caryn, it makes so much more sense when you view it through this lens. They might not know the whole story, but they know something is wrong. They sense the transactional nature of the relationship. They sense that Caryn fought too hard to be there. This wasn't just a love triangle, it was a hostile takeover. Caryn didn't just win Matt's heart, she conquered his territory. She repelled the invader, she secured the borders, and she installed herself as the puppet ruler. And Matt, with his ego and his need for control, found himself controlled by the very person he hired to help him. The mail order scandal isn't just about a failed marriage proposal. It exposes the core rot at the center of the Roloff family dynamic post-divorce. It shows us that Matt was desperate, Amy was right to be suspicious, and Caryn is far more dangerous than anyone gave her credit for. But the story doesn't end with the visa denial, because there is one more twist, one more piece of evidence that proves this wasn't just about love, it was about the show, it was about ratings. And that is where we find the true motivation behind the entire $50,000 mistake. We have to look at this through the lens of a producer, not just a lonely man. Matt Roloff has always been the driving force behind the business side of Little People, Big World. By 2016, the show was entering a dangerous slump. The divorce storyline was dark, depressing, and dragged on for too long. Viewers were getting fatigued. Matt knew that to keep the network interested and to keep the paychecks clearing, he needed a pivot. He needed a season 2 of his life. And what sells better on reality TV than a wedding? Specifically, a wedding between an older, wealthy American reality star and a young, glamorous foreigner. It is the formula that built entire franchises like 90 Day Fiancée. Leaked correspondence allegedly shows that Matt wasn't just sending Svetlana love notes, he was sending her production schedules. There are rumors that he had already pitched the new beginning arc to the producers. Imagine the season premiere, Matt travels to Europe, meets his love, brings her back to the farm, and clashes with Amy. It would have been rated gold. It would have revitalized the show for another 5 years. Svetlana wasn't just a girlfriend. She was the new female lead. She was cast to replace Amy, not just in the bedroom, but on the call sheet. This recontextualizes the entire romance. It suggests that the $50,000 wasn't spent on love. It was an investment in content. He was pre-producing his own life. This is why the rejection of the visa was such a catastrophic blow. It didn't just break his heart, it broke the storyline. The producers were likely expecting a blonde bombshell to step out of a limo at the farm. Instead, they got Caryn Chandler stepping out of the office. And while Caryn has become a staple of the show, she didn't bring the international intrigue or the shock value that Svetlana would have. Caryn was the safe choice. She was the backup plan. And deep down, Matt has always resented that his grand production number was canceled before it even aired. This brings us to Amy's reaction. For years, fans have criticized Amy for being bitter and angry during the divorce. But if you layer this scandal over her behavior, everything makes sense. Amy isn't stupid. She lived with Matt for decades. She knows when he is plotting. Sources close to Amy suggest she caught wind of the Eastern European project early on. Imagine the insult. You are still living in the farmhouse, navigating a painful divorce, and your husband is wiring thousands of dollars to a woman young enough to be his daughter, promising her your home and your spot on the show. Amy's famous bitterness wasn't just about the divorce, it was about the disrespect. When the visa was denied, insiders say Amy had a moment of dark vindication. She reportedly laughed when she heard the news. There is a quote circulating in the forums attributed to a friend of Amy's, claiming she said, "I always knew he wanted a trophy. He just couldn't afford the import tax." That sting is precise. It highlights exactly what Matt was trying to do. He was trying to upgrade his life with a credit card, and he failed. Amy's resistance to selling the farm, her reluctance to move out of the big house, it wasn't just stubbornness, it was a blockade. She was holding the line to ensure that if Matt did bring a new woman in, she wouldn't just walk into Amy's sanctuary without a fight. And what about the fans? For years, the audience has felt a creeping sense of unease regarding Matt and Caryn's relationship. The timeline never quite added up. The power dynamics felt off. But this scandal explains the creep factor perfectly. The audience sensed that the relationship was transactional because Matt's entire approach to dating post-divorce was transactional. He tried to buy Svetlana. When that failed, he negotiated a deal with Caryn. The interactions we see on screen, the lack of chemistry, the business-like discussions about the new house are the result of a relationship built on convenience and strategy, not passion. The fallout of this revelation is massive. It validates everyone who felt that Matt was acting like a predator during his midlife crisis. It paints him not as the victim of a grumpy wife, but as a man who treated women like interchangeable parts in his machine. It also reframes Caryn's role. For a long time, fans called her a home wrecker or a gold digger. But in this twisted narrative, she is actually the gatekeeper. She is the one who stopped Matt from making an even bigger mistake. If Svetlana had arrived, the show likely would have imploded. The family dynamic would have been destroyed. The kids, Zach, Jeremy, Molly, and Jacob, would likely have cut ties completely if their father married a 22-year-old. In a strange, twisted way, by sabotaging the visa, Caryn Chandler saved the family business. She saved Matt from himself, but she didn't do it for free. She extracted a price. The price was her position. She went from employee to matriarch. She secured the bag. And now she holds the ultimate trump card. Matt can never leave her because she knows the truth about the Svetlana files. She knows how desperate he was. She knows the depths of his vanity. So where does that leave us today? It leaves us watching a show that is built on a foundation of secrets. Every time Matt talks about his love for Caryn, remember Svetlana. Remember the ring that was bought for someone else. Remember the English lessons. Remember the anonymous letter sent to the embassy. It is a reminder that reality TV is never real, and the scariest dramas are the ones that happen when the cameras are turned off. Matt tried to order a wife like he orders Amazon packages. He thought he could prime ship a new life. But he forgot that packages can be intercepted, and sometimes the person signing for the delivery is the one person you were trying to replace. This story of the mail order scandal is just the tip of the iceberg. We have established that Matt is willing to cut corners and ignore safety for the sake of his vision. We have established that he hides the truth from his family and the viewers. But if you think a failed engagement is bad, wait until you hear what is happening inside the walls of the big house right now. While Matt was distracted chasing skirts overseas, the infrastructure of the farm was rotting from the inside out. There are reports coming in of a biological hazard that the family has been ignoring for years, a hazard that is affecting their lungs, their minds, and their future. I am talking about the toxic black mold scandal. It is not just a rumor. It is a health crisis that is slowly poisoning the Roloff legacy. Next time, we are going inside the big house to uncover the fungal infestation that Matt refuses to fix and why Caryn is suddenly pushing so hard to sell the property before the truth gets out. You do not want to miss this. Did Caryn save Matt from a scam, or did she just want the money for herself? Was Svetlana the victim or the accomplice? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And make sure you are subscribed with notifications on, because the mold episode is going to blow the lid off the final secret of Roloff Farms. Thanks for watching LPBW Update, and I'll see you in the next one.